US President Donald Trump committed a cardinal error that severely damaged Washington's trust with New Delhi. Kashmir is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and no third party mediation will ever be acceptable to India because his ego made him take credit for what he called a ceasefire while India called it an understanding. Namaskar friends, I welcome you all to the digital media of Uday India, and in Bhartita Ka Sanknath, today I will tell how Donald Trump lost India on the geopolitical chessboard. In the complex realm of international diplomacy, where perception often matters as much as policy, US President Donald Trump committed a cardinal error that severely damaged Washington's trust with New Delhi. He attempted to insert the US into India-Pakistan equation, particularly over Kashmir, India's most sensitive and deeply internal issue. So by overstepping India's most well-established diplomatic red line, Trump not only displayed a lack of geopolitical finesse, but also squandered years of carefully cultivated strategic alignment between the world's oldest and largest democracies. The first shock came in 2019 during a press interaction with then Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan in Washington, when Trump claimed that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had requested him to mediate the Kashmir dispute. The statement was not only false but also tone deaf to India's long-standing and consistently reiterated position. See, Kashmir is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan, and no third-party mediation will ever be acceptable to India. US must remember this. Modi government swiftly refuted the claim and the Indian parliament erupted in anger. Yet, what was more damaging than the falsehood was what it revealed. Trump either misunderstood or ignored India's strategic sensitivities, assuming his deal-maker persona could be imposed on one of the most complex and emotional geopolitical issues of the subcontinent. The final straw, however, came in 2025 after India's Operation Sindoor, while India described it merely as a reaffirmation of an understanding already in place in 2003. Trump and his administration rushed to take credit for as a US brokered ceasefire. Friends, unfortunately, US President Donald Trump preempted Modi's speech with his own. After having crossed the strongest of red lines for India, interference or mediation between India and Pakistan for Kashmir, which is an internal state of India, part of which is illegally occupied by Pakistan, he doubled down. What happened? Because his ego made him take credit for what he called a ceasefire, while India called it an understanding. Remember, India called it an understanding. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech clearly showed, the US administration had no role to play in that sequence of events. After completely ruining the India-US relationship, he threw another lighted match into the mix, a trade carrot that would be offered if India and Pakistan complied with his ideas. This evidence between India and Pakistan was another red line. With that, Trump just donated years of US-India defense diplomacy with one reckless outburst after another. This not only contradicted India's official position but also diminished the domestic political and military capital. New Delhi had invested in a posture of strength post the Balakot airstrikes and the revocation of Article 370. For India, the ceasefire was a tactical move, not a diplomatic climb down. But by boosting of US involvement, Trump undermined India's narrative portraying it as a state pushed into restraint under foreign pressure, and worst of all, equating India counter-terror actions with Pakistani provocations. What made matters worse was the tone Trump adopted. What was the tone he adopted? A mix of self-congratulated egoism and transactional diplomacy. His assertion that the US had engineered peace between the two nuclear powers was aimed at burning his credentials as a global peacemaker. But in doing so, he ignored not just India's core strategic sensitivities but also basic diplomatic etiquette. Modi's subsequent speeches, pointedly omitting any acknowledgement of the US role, spoke of volumes. US but must note it. It was India's way of publicly asserting that it acted in its own national interest, not under anyone's patronage. India has long viewed itself not just as a regional power but as a rising global pole in a multipolar world. Under Modi's leadership, that ambition has become more assertive. For Washington to retain India's trust, it must treat New Delhi not as a problem to be managed but as a partner to be respected. Trump's actions, driven more by optics than understanding, fractured that sense of respect. While strategic cooperation between India and US will not collapse thanks to institutional momentum and shared concern over China, the personal equation between the Indian leadership and Trump administration will never recover from that breach. In the grand chessboard of geopolitics, misreading an ally's priorities can prove costlier than the losing a battle. It would be a costlier affair for US in losing a battle with India. Trump's repeated references to Kashmir, his attempt to frame the ceasefire as an American achievement, and his failure to grasp India's deep-rooted aversion to third-party interference in its sovereign affairs all combined to push India toward a more cautious, calculated approach to its US partner. The lesson here is very simple. Trust in diplomacy is not built on votes or brokered deals, but on mutual respect for red lines. And Donald Trump, in his eagerness to play peacemaker, lost sight of that. That's all for today. Stay tuned with Uday India, and continuously we will keep you updated on Indo-Pakistan affairs and how India is maintaining relationship with US or with China. That's all for today. Bharat Mata Ki Jai.